I'd sort of forgotten about it, but I remember at the time being so angry. This anger, and I thought, why is this? Well, it was sort of boy. I thought it was an old man, was probably not a great deal older than me.
Behind the polished image of the British royal family, whispers of power, control, and hidden authority have always lingered. When Queen Elizabeth II was alive, insiders claimed she maintained a secret vault of influence, used not just for treasures, but for quiet decisions that shaped royal behavior. Some even believe this was where she subtly reinforced boundaries with figures like Camilla, the then Duchess of Cornwall, in ways the public never saw. What really happened behind those closed doors may surprise you deeply indeed today. And what do you think about Queen Elizabeth's action towards Camilla? What did Camilla do to deserve such treatment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. A historic shift inside monarchy. For decades, the relationship between Queen Elizabeth II and Camilla was one of the most closely watched and misunderstood stories inside the British royal family. That is why many people were stunned when just 7 months before her death, Queen Elizabeth made a historic announcement that changed Camilla's future forever. In February 2022, during the celebration of her Platinum Jubilee, the Queen revealed that it was her sincere wish that Camilla, then known as the Duchess of Cornwall, would be recognized as Queen Consort when Prince Charles became king. The statement carried enormous weight. Coming from a monarch who had spent more than 70 years on the throne, it was seen as a powerful public endorsement of the woman who had once been one of the most controversial figures in royal history. The announcement surprised many royal watchers because it marked a dramatic change from what had previously been planned. When Charles and Camilla married in 2005, Buckingham Palace stated that Camilla would use the title Princess Consort rather than Queen when Charles eventually became king. At the time, this arrangement was viewed as a way to avoid public backlash, as many people still associated Camilla with the painful breakdown of Charles's marriage to Princess Diana. Yet, over the years, public opinion gradually shifted. Camilla quietly devoted herself to royal duties, supported numerous charitable causes, and avoided the spotlight whenever possible. Her steady commitment helped reshape how many people viewed her role within the monarchy. Royal experts believe Queen Elizabeth's decision was far more than a simple change of title. It was a carefully considered move designed to strengthen public support for Camilla and ensure a smoother transition when Charles inherited the throne. By personally expressing her wish, the Queen effectively gave Camilla the royal seal of approval, sending a clear message that she had earned her place at the heart of the monarchy. What made the moment even more remarkable was the history behind it. The bond between Elizabeth and Camilla had not always been warm or effortless. In earlier years, tensions, public scrutiny, and family challenges created obstacles that seemed difficult to overcome. The path from cautious acceptance to public endorsement was long and often complicated. That journey transformed one of the royal family's most delicate relationships into one of mutual respect and trust. By the time Queen Elizabeth made her final wishes known, her message was unmistakable. Camilla was no longer an outsider seeking acceptance. She had become a valued member of the institution, trusted to stand beside the future king and help carry the monarchy into a new era. How did Queen Elizabeth exercise influence in the monarchy? Does her jewelry play any role in exercising this influence? Let's delve into the details of the subtle battle fought. Silent royal symbolic power. In this retelling of royal life, the British monarchy is presented as far more than a world of grand ceremonies, glittering crowns, and carefully choreographed public appearances. Behind the palace walls exists another reality, one built on tradition, restraint, and an unspoken language that few fully understand. It is a world where silence can carry more weight than words, and where the smallest gesture can spark endless speculation. At the heart of this story stands Queen Elizabeth II. Rather than being portrayed as a monarch who engaged in public arguments or open displays of displeasure, she is imagined as someone who exercised influence in a far quieter way. Her strength is not shown through confrontation, but through her mastery of royal customs, long-established traditions, and the careful management of access within the institution she spent her life protecting. In this narrative, many believe the Queen never needed to publicly criticize anyone or explain her feelings. The royal system itself provided her with tools that were far more subtle. Among those tools, none seemed more powerful than the collection of historic jewels kept within the royal vaults. Here, royal jewelry becomes much more than a collection of beautiful treasures. Every tiara, necklace, brooch, and bracelet is viewed as carrying a hidden message. These pieces are not merely worn, they are interpreted. A dazzling tiara placed on one royal figure may be seen as a sign of trust and acceptance. A treasured piece that remains unworn may suggest distance or caution. When a historic jewel suddenly appears on a different member of the family, observers often wonder whether a quiet shift in status is taking place behind the scenes. As a result, the royal vault transforms into something almost mythical, a silent communication system understood by palace insiders, closely monitored by royal watchers, and endlessly analyzed by newspapers and commentators. Every appearance becomes a puzzle, and every jewel becomes a clue. At the center of this fascinating web of symbolism stand three key figures. Queen Elizabeth is seen as the guardian of tradition and the gatekeeper of royal privilege. Camilla enters the royal family through marriage, navigating a path filled with public scrutiny and complex expectations. Meanwhile, Catherine steadily rises in popularity and visibility, becoming an increasingly prominent face of the monarchy. Between these three women lies a tension that is never openly acknowledged and never officially confirmed. Yet in the eyes of many observers, it seems to reveal itself through carefully chosen appearances, meaningful timing, and centuries-old traditions. Whether real or imagined, this silent drama keeps royal watchers captivated, searching for meaning in every detail and listening closely to what is never actually said. Is there anything so special about her jewelry vault? What does it represent? Let's dive into the details of the vault that spoke without words. The silent language of jewels. The Royal Jewelry Vault is not just a hidden, secure room filled with diamonds, crowns, and priceless ornaments. It is imagined as something far greater, a living archive of identity, memory, and authority. Every item placed inside it is more than an object of beauty. It is a piece of history that carries meaning far beyond its shine. Each jewel is tied to a moment that shaped a life, a family, or even a nation. Inside this imagined vault, every piece has a voice. Some jewels once belonged to queens, who influenced the course of history through their presence and decisions. Some are linked to royal weddings that marked the beginning of new dynasties and public hope. Others are connected to important national events that people still remember with pride or emotion. Because of this deep meaning, choosing a jewel is never seen as a simple matter of fashion. It becomes a quiet message about trust, status, and belonging within a structured world. In this retelling, Queen Elizabeth is portrayed as someone who understands this silent language very well. She knows that what is worn in public speaks loudly to the world, but what is not worn also sends a message, even if no one says it out loud. Silence, in this system, can be just as powerful as display. What is chosen and what is set aside both carry meaning. For this reason, the vault is seen as a tool of quiet governance. It does not speak, but it guides. It does not argue, but it directs. It is not emotional or random. Instead, it works in an organized and deliberate way, shaping how royal identity is presented over time. Some jewels are used freely and appear often in public appearances by working royals. Others are kept for special duties or specific individuals. A few are reserved for major state events, where tradition and symbolism are at their highest, and some pieces remain unseen for long periods, resting quietly in storage, as if waiting for the right moment in history. To the public, this may look like simple rotation or personal taste, but within this narrative, it is understood as a carefully built system of meaning, where every choice reflects deeper structure and silent communication. In this way, the vault is not only a place of storage but also a quiet system of storytelling that shapes how history is felt and remembered across generations, even when no one directly explains it. It becomes a silent language passed through objects, tradition, and careful decisions that together preserve meaning without needing constant explanation to the public. Power is expressed gently through restraint and timing in this system overall. What was the first shocking moment Camilla had in the royal palace? How did she respond? let's dig into the details of the first public fracture Camilla experienced in royal life. Approval beyond visible control. One of the most striking early moments in this interpretation of Camilla's life inside the royal system is set during what should have been a simple, well-prepared, official engagement. Everything begins in order. The schedule is fixed. Staff move around with quiet urgency, checking details that most people would never notice. Every part of the preparation seems polished and controlled. Her clothing has been carefully chosen. Her hair and makeup are arranged to match the expectations of the occasion. Even the smallest details are treated as important, because in this world, nothing is small. Camilla selects jewelry that, in her understanding at that moment, fits her role and the formality of the event. It is elegant, suitable, and in her view, entirely appropriate. There is no sense of mistake or conflict. Everything feels aligned with what has been planned. Then, unexpectedly, the tone of the day changes. A message arrives from the Queen's office. It is short, formal, and without emotion. There is no explanation, no discussion, no softening of the instruction. The message is clear. The jewelry she is wearing has not been approved. It must be removed immediately. What makes this moment so intense in the way it is often retold is not only the instruction itself, but where and how it happens. This is not a private correction behind closed doors. It happens in the middle of preparation, surrounded by people. Staff are present, aides are nearby, officials are readying for departure. Everyone becomes aware, even if no one speaks. In this setting, Camilla is required to remove the jewelry piece by piece. Each movement is deliberate, slow, and visible. The people around her do not react openly. Instead, they look away, pretend to be busy, or lower their eyes in silent discomfort. The silence in the room grows heavier than any spoken criticism could have been. Charles stands beside her during this moment, yet in this retelling, he does not step in. He does not question the instruction. He does not offer disagreement or defense. His silence in this context becomes deeply noticeable. It fills the space in a way words normally would. When the process is finally complete, Camilla turns toward him, as if expecting some form of reassurance, understanding, or even quiet support, but none is offered. There is no explanation that softens what just happened. In this narrative framing, that moment becomes more than a simple dress code correction. It becomes an early emotional turning point, a silent lesson that within the structure she has entered, nothing is personal in the usual sense. Everything is regulated, everything is approved, everything is controlled through unseen rules that decide what is acceptable long before anyone enters the room. Are there written rules or codes on the use and approval of the jewelries? Are there any procedure for the use of the jewelries? Let's dive into the details of the rules of access and unspoken hierarchy: symbolic, hierarchical, interpretive, silent, positional. As the story unfolds, a deeper system is imagined beneath the surface of royal life, a quiet structure that guides how royal jewelry is used and who wears what. This system is never written down in public records. It is never announced in speeches or official statements. Instead, it is believed to exist through patterns that people notice over time, like repeated choices and long silences. In this way of thinking, Queen Elizabeth is seen as the central figure who shaped and controlled these patterns during her reign. She is viewed as the one who decided, directly or indirectly, how important pieces of jewelry moved between members of the royal family. Some jewels appear often on certain individuals, while others are rarely or never seen on them at all. For example, some historic tiaras are seen on Princess Catherine during key public events, while those same pieces are not associated with Queen Camilla in the same way. Some necklaces and brooches return to public view after many years, while others remain unseen or carefully kept away from certain wearers. Yet no official reason is ever given for these choices. It is this silence that becomes the center of interpretation. Because when there is no explanation, people begin to create meaning of their own. They ask why one person is chosen for a famous tiara while another is not. They wonder why a piece of jewelry suddenly returns after years in storage. They notice how some items seem to move between royal women, while others remain fixed in place. Within this storytelling lens, the royal vault is no longer just a storage place for jewels. It becomes a symbol of order, memory, and quiet decisions about image and status. Each piece of jewelry is seen as part of a larger story about who is highlighted and who is less emphasized in public life. In this interpretation, Camilla is not absent from the system. She is present, acknowledged, and active in royal duties. However, she is sometimes seen as not being placed at the center of symbolic attention in the same consistent way as others. This creates a feeling of imbalance in how visibility is experienced. The emotional tension of the story comes from this idea of presence without steady symbolic emphasis. People are seen, but not always highlighted in the same way, and that difference becomes the heart of the narrative. Over time, this way of reading events grows into a wider narrative about tradition, influence, and quiet control, where meaning is often shaped more by observation than by official explanation, leaving room for interpretation, debate, and emotional storytelling among those who follow royal life closely from afar, over time perspective. What weight is usually hidden in every royal jewel? What do they represent in the monarchy? Let's talk about the jewels of memory and emotional weight. Jewels, memory, meaning, comparison, legacy. A central idea running through this narrative is that some jewels are far more than beautiful objects made of gold and gemstones. Over time, they become vessels of memory. They carry emotions, personal histories, and even public meaning that goes far beyond their physical worth. Some of these pieces are linked to joyful beginnings, weddings, engagements, and early moments of love and hope. Others are tied to well-known public figures whose lives were followed closely and whose images left a lasting mark on entire generations. Because of this, the jewels stop being just accessories. They become quiet symbols that remind people of certain people, certain times, and certain feelings. So, when these same pieces are seen again on different individuals years later, the reaction is rarely neutral. People do not just see jewelry. They see stories being continued or reshaped. Emotions are easily stirred, and meanings are often added even when nothing is officially said. In this retelling, jewels once strongly associated with Princess Diana are described as carrying a deep emotional echo. They are remembered not only as part of her public appearance, but as part of her identity in the eyes of many. As a result, they are treated almost like memory objects, items that silently hold traces of her presence in the public imagination. When such pieces are later seen on Catherine, the meaning is often framed as a sense of continuation. It is interpreted as if a story is moving forward, with symbols gently passed from one generation to the next. In this view, the jewels help create a sense of connection between past and present, linking different chapters of the same larger story. However, when Camilla is not present in those same symbolic moments, the narrative does not describe it directly as rejection or exclusion. Instead, it is often read in a more subtle way. Her absence from certain visual traditions is interpreted as distance, something expressed not through words, but through where attention is placed and where it is not. The emotional strength of this kind of storytelling does not come from clear actions or spoken statements. Instead, it grows from comparison. One image is placed beside another, one presence beside an absence, and meaning begins to form in that space between them. In such a world of interpretation, comparison itself becomes powerful. It creates pressure without anyone openly applying it. Nothing is officially declared. Nothing is confirmed. Yet everything is quietly observed, carefully noticed, and emotionally felt all the same. What pattern seems to have unfolded from Queen Elizabeth's action? Why would some have access to the jewelries, while some others are denied access? Let's take a look at the pattern of absence and replacement. Accumulating symbols and quiet power. As the story moves forward, a clear pattern slowly begins to appear. It is not marked by one big or dramatic moment. Instead, it is built through repetition over time. Certain royal jewels are seen again and again on Catherine during important state events. Pieces that carry history are brought back into public view at key moments, as if carefully chosen to reflect continuity with the past. Over time, this repeated use begins to create meaning beyond fashion. It suggests stability, tradition, and connection to earlier generations of the monarchy. At the same time, Camilla's public appearances are often described in a different way within this narrative. She is still present in royal life, still visible at events, but the jewels and symbols associated with her are seen as less tied to deeply historic collections. This difference is not always obvious in a single moment, but it becomes more noticeable when viewed across many occasions. In this interpretation, nothing is openly explained. There is no official statement about why certain pieces are worn by one person more than another. Because of this silence, observers in the story world begin to create their own meanings. They read patterns into choices, and they connect small details into larger stories. Meanwhile, King Charles is portrayed as someone living between two responsibilities. On one side is his duty as king, representing tradition and the structure of the monarchy. On the other side are his personal relationships within the royal family. These two roles exist together, but they do not always move in the same direction. Within this framing, he is often seen as careful or restrained, not openly changing the symbolic systems that already exist. Whether by choice or by necessity, he is described as working within an established structure rather than reshaping it. As a result, decisions continue to unfold in quiet, subtle ways. Nothing appears loud or sudden, but over time, these small choices begin to form a pattern that people notice and discuss. For Camilla, this experience is not defined by one single event. Instead, it builds slowly through accumulation. Small moments that might seem unimportant on their own begin to feel heavier when remembered together. Over time, they shape an emotional experience that is less about individual incidents and more about the weight of repeated impressions. In this way, the narrative does not rely on direct statements or open conflict. Instead, it grows through repeated signals, quiet choices, and the meaning people attach to them over time. What may look small in isolation becomes significant when viewed as part of a longer timeline, where memory, interpretation, and emotion combine to shape how the story is understood over time more clearly. Did the narrative change after the death of Queen Elizabeth? What changed in the royal family's rules and protocols? Let's find out what the end of an era and the shift in visibility looks like. The language of royal silence. The final part of the story begins with a major turning point, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. With her death, an entire way of managing symbolism inside the monarchy is imagined to slowly loosen. For many years, there had been a quiet system in place, unspoken rules about who wore what, when, and how certain royal jewels and symbolic items were shared or withheld. It was never written down in public, never openly explained, but it shaped what people saw and how they interpreted the royal image. When that guiding presence is gone, the structure of silence that once held everything in balance is no longer enforced in the same steady way. As a result, the visual identity of the monarchy begins to shift in noticeable but subtle ways. The language of appearance, crowns, tiaras, brooches, and historic pieces, starts to carry new meanings in the public eye. In this imagined transition, Camilla, now queen consort, moves into a position of greater symbolic visibility. Her role is no longer just supportive in the background. Instead, she is seen stepping forward more clearly into royal tradition, sometimes associated with more striking and historically important pieces of jewelry. These choices are interpreted as reflections of her formal status and acceptance within the structure of the monarchy. At the same time, Catherine continues to hold a strong and steady presence. Her appearance in significant symbolic items strengthens public perception of her as a central figure in the monarchy's future. She is increasingly seen not just as a present royal figure, but as a bridge toward what comes next for the institution. What emerges is not a simple win or loss between individuals, but something more complex, a rebalancing of meaning. The visual world of the monarchy now seems to move along two parallel paths. One path reflects current authority and established rank. The other points toward future continuity, stability, and long-term survival. Between these two paths lies the memory of the previous era, an era defined by restraint, careful control, and silence that guided everything without ever being spoken aloud. That silence once acted like an invisible framework, holding the entire system together. The story ends with a deeper reflection. Nothing in this world was ever officially announced as conflict. No strategy was openly confirmed. No intention was clearly stated for public consumption. And yet, meaning still emerged in the way people watched, interpreted, and connected the dots. In institutions built on tradition, dignity, and restraint, silence is never empty. It becomes its own form of communication, and often, the strongest messages are not the ones spoken clearly, but the ones left unspoken, where interpretation fills the space and history quietly writes its own version of events. So what do you think about Camilla's relationship with Queen Elizabeth? Do you think Queen Elizabeth should have accepted Camilla long ago? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.